Are you wondering, how do I practice NLP? Well, stick around, I'm going to answer that question in a second. Okay, so welcome back, and again in this video we're going to be talking about how to practice NLP. Now, we've got a lot of different ways that you can practice neurolinguistic programming techniques. If you've been at a certification, then you're probably familiar with being an audience participant, listening to the lectures of the NLP techniques, and then of course breaking off into groups and practicing techniques one-on-one with people. Now, of course, that's a good way to learn the actual techniques, to practice them on another person, but there's a whole other element of NLP that we need to consider, which is tuning up our ears to the language distinctions that are often taught in the system. So for example, meta model and listening to the Milton model distinctions. So for practice, what you can do, you don't always have to have another person. It's always nice to do so, but you can do things like, for example, turn on the news. And when you listen to the news, you can set an intention for listening for certain language patterns. So for example, let's say that we're going to focus on listening for nominalizations, so that you're going to set the intention watching that news broadcast for listening for every nominalization that is being produced. And then you can practice your challenges. So we can also do this with deletions, we can do this with distortions and generalizations of all sorts. So when we begin to tune up our ears to listen for these things, we can develop that skill to the point where we can get it to become subconscious. So now, after doing this for a long period of time, I hear these language patterns in people's speech all the time, and I'm no longer even aware that I'm picking them up until I want to challenge them. So we want this process to become automatic in our distinctions so that we can layer in additional strategies and distinctions that we can pick up in everyday communication without having to think so much while we're talking to people. So that's one way that you can actually practice NLP techniques. Another great way to practice NLP is to actually, you can do this with yourself, is to think about something, let's say for example a dog, and when you think about a dog, you're going to make an internal representation of a dog. Now that's going to be any dog of your choosing, for example, but stick with me here. So you're going to think about a dog, and then what I want you to do is to actually think about a sound that's associated to the picture. And then once you've got that, then I want you to think about a kinesthetic feeling that is associated with the picture and the auditory input. Then, for example, you can associate a smell, which some people might think about the smell of a dog that smells good, maybe a dog that smells bad, or a wet dog, for example. And by doing this process, what you're doing is you're fully developing your internal representation of certain things. So you're stretching yourself to get visual, auditory, kinesthetic, gustatory, olfactory, putting all of those sensory experiences together. And next step, what you can do is to play with the submodalities of each, to turn up the brightness of the image, turn it down, change the kind of dog in the picture that you see. Notice what happens to your representations when you change the dog from a real dog to a cartoon dog, for example. And by changing it to a cartoon dog, how does that change the strength or the appeal of the smell and the touch sensation? Does that change things? By going through this kind of a drill internally, you can start to get a really good feel for how certain representations in the mind will change the submodalities that are associated to it. Now, one of the distinctions that you will make in the NLP system is understanding how to use submodalities and how they alter internal experience. By doing this kind of an activity on yourself and noticing all these finer distinctions internally, it'll make it easier for you to work with other people on their submodality shifts and understanding how the language and the words that you're using are actually creating an internal effect on that other person. Last but not least, you can always work with a friend to play some language games, and one of them, of course, is being a meta monster. And being a meta monster would be just constantly getting into a routine of challenging each other in terms of generalizations, distortions, and deletions. So if somebody goes, "You made me feel that way," you say, "How specifically did you make me feel that way?" Or "How specifically could I make you feel a certain way?" Or for example, anytime somebody makes a generalization, all people are that way. Really? You can't find one example where somebody wasn't that way? And you make it a fun game. Now, of course, being a meta monster with people that don't want to play that game is highly obnoxious, and I highly suggest that you do not do that with other people unless they're willing to play along. But playing this game tunes up your ears, and it makes it a fun game to constantly be questioning all of the violations in language that we hear every single day, but we let them just kind of pass through, and we just accept it, and then internally we alter our representations to basically continue conversations without further gathering additional information. So it'll help you tune up your ears, as always, which in my opinion is one of the most important things that you can do early on when you're learning NLP and to progress your skills. So that's it for this video. I hope that's been helpful and some new ways that you can practice your NLP techniques. Sam here, and if you like this video, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you want to get notifications of every time these videos come up. You'll have to hit that little bell after you hit the subscribe. And of course, be sure to check in for additional videos and check out the resources down low in the description box. Sam Visnick here. Thanks for watching.